Welcome. This time we uncover the hunts, the harvests, and the humble feasts that shaped everyday life, at a time in history when your next meal was not guaranteed. We imagine, what did it take to survive till your next meal, if there was any? We explore the flavors, the dangers, and the stories simmering behind every meal. But just before we get started, if historical explorations bring you wonder or capture your curiosity, feel free to like the video or subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what I share here. And if it appeals to you, let us know where you're tuning in from. Always a pleasure to realize where these explorations travel to. With that said, let's begin. 1. Food wasn't guaranteed. Most people didn't know what they'd eat the next day, or if they'd eat at all. There were no stocked pantries, obviously no grocery stores, and certainly no delivery apps. Meals depended entirely on what could be gathered, grown, caught, or traded. A single bad hunt or failed harvest could mean empty bowls for days. 2. Hunting or gathering depended on nature, but nature didn't always cooperate. Foraging for wild foods or hunting game took deep knowledge, skill, and luck. One mistake could mean eating something poisonous or going home with nothing. For the nobility, common villagers still quietly hunted rabbits, squirrels, and deer, risking severe punishment to feed their families. Can you imagine the tension they felt? The thrill and fear mingling together, stepping carefully, staying as quiet as possible? 3. Imagine gathering enough food to feed yourself or family, and then it rots within days. It was difficult to preserve food. You wouldn't just place it in a refrigerator and go on to your next hangout. You had to smoke, salt, or dry it. Some people even buried it. And if those methods failed, it wasn't just wasteful. It was dangerous, since spoiled food could make you seriously ill. Bears could turn the tables, making the hunter the hunted. Hunting was never entirely safe, even for the privileged. 4. Preserving food wasn't just a smart idea. It was a life necessity. Winters were long, crops could fail, traps could be empty, and when that happened, people starved. One missed season of good harvest could plunge a whole village into famine. Carefully selecting bright, juicy berries, their eyes always alert, cautious. 5. Not everyone was allowed to hunt freely. Lords and kings owned most of the land and game, and hunting on their property was harshly punishable. So you and your cousin had to risk your life for a rabbit. Meat, when available, was treasured, salted, dried, or smoked to last through harsh winters. Families gathered around simple wooden tables, sharing stories, laughter, and the warmth of a meal earned through hard labor and constant vigilance. If you enjoyed this little travel into the past, let me know through a comment what else you would love to explore. I have attached to this video another where we dive further into how people survived back then. Join me there. Traveling thousands of miles, traded carefully and dearly, bringing flavor and a hint of mystery to medieval dishes. Deep within the bustling market squares of medieval towns, spices arrived like whispers of distant lands, carried by weary traders who traveled long, winding roads and perilous seas. Cinnamon from far-off Ceylon, peppercorns from mysterious India, cloves and nutmeg from islands few had ever heard of. Each spice was precious, each pinch carefully measured, savored, and treasured. But could ordinary villagers truly afford to flavor their meals with these exotic ingredients? Rarely. Instead, spices were most often the privilege of the wealthy, sprinkled sparingly into dishes to impress guests, showcase their status, and mask the taste of food that had gone slightly off. Can you imagine the excitement, the curiosity when a ship arrived, carrying these tiny treasures, their scent drifting through crowded streets, promising flavors from worlds away? For most common folk, flavor came from closer to home, from the earth itself. They grew small gardens behind their cottages, tending carefully to herbs like sage, rosemary, thyme, and mint. The freshness of these herbs brightened simple dishes, transformed bland porridges into comforting meals, and added depth to soups and stews. Garlic and onions, too, were essential companions, simmered slowly, infusing the air with warm, inviting aromas. Perhaps you've walked through a garden yourself, plucking a leaf, inhaling its fragrance, understanding how even the simplest ingredients can enrich life. But herbs and vegetables were not always enough. Meat was crucial for survival, especially during harsh winters. Hunting was one way, yes, yet raising livestock was another. Chickens pecked and scratched around cottage yards. Pigs rooted through forests, and sheep grazed quietly on green hillsides. Animals were carefully tended, their meat salted, smoked, or cured to last through the bitter cold months. Families gathered together to preserve food, working side by side, knowing each morsel stored away was security against hunger. Yet even then, hunting wild animals remained a tempting supplement. Villagers sometimes set snares and traps quietly in the forest at dusk, hoping to catch rabbits or hares under cover of darkness. Was it risky to hunt illegally, knowing strict laws punished those caught? Absolutely, but how could hungry parents resist when their children's bellies growled and winter loomed near? They moved silently, hearts pounding, praying their efforts went unnoticed. Meanwhile, for the nobility, hunting took on a more elaborate form. Falconry, the art of training birds of prey, became a symbol of refinement and mastery. Lords and ladies donned thick leather gloves and released majestic falcons into the sky, watching in awe as the birds soared high above, swooping down swiftly upon their prey. The falcon, proud, fierce, and loyal, was more than just a hunter. It was a companion, a partner in the delicate dance of survival and privilege. Can you picture that moment of quiet anticipation, holding your breath, eyes lifted skyward, waiting for the falcon to return victorious? Yet, amid all this talk of hunting and gathering, what about fishing? Rivers, lakes, and seas offered fresh bounty that sustained villages along their banks. Fishermen rose early, rowing gently onto calm waters as dawn's first light softened the horizon. Nets dipped below the surface, patiently waiting, as fishermen whispered stories, sang softly, or simply listened to the gentle lapping of water against their boats. Fish caught in abundance were smoked or dried, carefully saved for leaner days. For those lucky enough to live near water, the rhythm of life revolved around these watery harvests. Have you ever wondered how all these different sources of food shaped daily life in medieval Europe? The quiet routines, secretive hunts, lively markets, and bustling kitchens, all interwoven, creating the fabric of survival. Next, we'll delve deeper into the kitchens themselves, exploring the heart of the medieval home, where meals were prepared and stories shared around warm, glowing hearths. Inside the quiet heart of every medieval household was the kitchen, warm, smoky, bustling with gentle activity. Flames danced softly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on stone walls, illuminating shelves lined with earthenware pots, wooden bowls, and sturdy iron utensils. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to prepare meals without modern conveniences, relying solely on fire, patience, and skill? In those kitchens, cooking was slow and deliberate. Pots hung suspended above glowing embers, their contents bubbling quietly for hours, flavors mingling and deepening. Meat, when available, was often stewed slowly with vegetables, grains, and herbs, transforming tough, inexpensive cuts into tender, nourishing dishes that fed entire families. Each morning, bread dough was kneaded by hand, shaped carefully and baked on hot stones or in communal ovens. Imagine the simple joy of warm bread, crust crackling gently beneath your fingers, steam rising into the cool morning air. But what did medieval villagers eat when meat and bread were scarce? Porridge made from barley or oats, simmered softly day after day in iron pots. It was plain, humble food, yet nourishing and dependable. Villagers sweetened it sparingly with wild honey or berries, savoring each bite slowly. Beans, peas, and lentils rounded out meals, providing essential protein when meat was scarce. Sometimes families gathered wild greens, cooking them gently in broth, seasoning with garlic or onion to add flavor. Can you picture sitting at their humble tables, grateful for every mouthful, every simple delight? Yet there were times when hunger lingered persistently at the edges of daily life. Winters were especially harsh when stored grain dwindled and hunting became difficult. Villagers turned then to dried fruits, nuts, and preserved meat stored carefully months earlier. In towns and villages alike, families came together sharing what they could spare, forming quiet bonds of community and resilience in the face of hardship. Have you ever thought about the strength required for these quiet acts of generosity? Kindness shared quietly in moments of scarcity? For the nobility, scarcity was less familiar, but their kitchens too faced challenges. Large feasts required meticulous planning and preparation starting days in advance. Cooks and helpers hustled tirelessly, skinning game, plucking poultry, grinding spices, and blending sauces. They roasted large joints of meat on spits, slowly rotating them over roaring fires. Imagine the aroma drifting through grand halls, enticing guests, creating anticipation and excitement for the meal ahead. Food for the wealthy was a grand spectacle, abundant, elaborate, and carefully orchestrated. Yet even noble dining was shaped by seasons and nature. In springtime, fresh lamb and tender greens appeared on tables, celebrating new life and renewal. Autumn brought hearty dishes of venison, boar, apples, and chestnuts, rich with the bounty of harvest. Winter feasts showcased preserved meats, dried fruits, and warming spices, banishing the chill of dark, cold months. Can you sense the rhythm and harmony between people and nature, woven seamlessly into the fabric of medieval life? Beyond the kitchen, hunters prepared meticulously for their expeditions, sharpening arrows, crafting snares, and training dogs and falcons. Hunts required skill, patience, and cooperation. Groups tracked animals quietly, reading subtle signs, broken twigs, faint tracks, or whispered rustles in the underbrush. Patience was their companion, as they waited silently for the perfect moment to strike. Have you ever wondered how hunters learned these skills, passed down carefully from generation to generation through quiet instruction and shared experience? Fishing held its own quiet rhythm. Fishermen silently cast nets or lines, watching carefully for telltale ripples on water surfaces. When catches were plentiful, fish were salted or smoked, stored carefully to sustain families in leaner times. Sometimes, villagers gathered together for communal fishing, turning it into a joyful event filled with laughter, songs, and stories shared along banks of rivers or lakes. Can you imagine the quiet joy of these moments? Community and companionship warming hearts against the cold? Whether in humble cottages or grand estates, medieval life revolved around the quest for nourishment, the quiet rhythms of hunting, fishing, gardening, cooking, and preserving food. Each meal carried meaning. Each bite held memories of labor, skill, risk, and careful preparation. Next, we'll journey deeper still into the forests themselves, exploring the hidden skills, dangers, and adventures that shaped medieval hunting expeditions. Deep within the shadowy forests, medieval hunters moved quietly, their senses sharpened by necessity, their movements guided by ancient knowledge passed down through generations. Imagine stepping into a forest so dense, sunlight barely pierced through the canopy above. Each rustle of a leaf, each distant branch cracking softly held both promise and danger. How did these hunters know when to move, when to pause, when the forest itself seemed to hold its breath? Hunting in medieval times wasn't simple or easy. It required careful skill, patience, and deep respect for the wild creatures that roamed the land. Deer, agile and wary, were common yet challenging prey. Groups of hunters tracked them patiently, scanning the ground for faint hoofprints, broken twigs, or tufts of soft fur caught on low branches. Can you picture yourself kneeling quietly, fingertips brushing the earth, reading subtle clues left behind by animals, understanding the language of the forest itself? But hunting deer wasn't just a matter of skill, it was a test of teamwork. Villagers would coordinate closely, communicating with quiet gestures and whispered words. Some would remain hidden, bows drawn, arrows ready, while others gently guided the animals toward them. The moment of the hunt was tense, a perfect balance between movement and stillness, between calm anticipation and sudden action. Have you ever experienced that moment of quiet suspense? Your heart pounding softly, waiting for the precise instant to act? Yet deer weren't the only animals hunted in the medieval forest. Wild boars roamed among the thick underbrush, fierce and unpredictable. Their powerful tusks and protective instincts made them formidable adversaries, dangerous even to experienced hunters. Pursuing a boar required courage, quick thinking, and agility. Hunters often used dogs specially trained for the task, loyal companions who fearlessly confronted the boar, giving their human partners a chance to strike carefully and swiftly. Can you imagine the bond between hunter and hound, forged through shared risks, loyalty, and quiet companionship? Smaller prey, such as rabbits and hares, offered easier, but still essential sources of food. Traps and snares were carefully placed in hidden corners of the forest, camouflaged among leaves and grasses. Children often learn these skills early on, their small fingers deftly tying knots, setting delicate triggers, and waiting with quiet patience for their efforts to yield results. Imagine yourself as a child, crouched low to the ground, holding your breath, eyes wide with anticipation, knowing your family's meal depended on your careful, quiet work. The forest also provided nourishment beyond meat. Hunters and gatherers alike knew where to find edible plants and mushrooms, recognizing subtle differences between safe and dangerous varieties. They knew the seasons, understood when berries ripened sweetest, when nuts fell from branches, and when herbs were most potent. Did they ever make mistakes? Rarely, but when they did, the consequences could be serious or even fatal. Imagine the quiet wisdom, the careful lessons passed down from parent to child, ensuring such mistakes were seldom repeated. Yet hunting wasn't without its rituals and superstitions. Before entering the forest, hunters might quietly whisper prayers, gently asking for safety and success. They respected nature deeply, believing the forest itself was alive, watching their every move. Some believed in woodland spirits, guardians who could help or hinder the hunt, depending on hunters' behavior. Can you picture walking through the woods yourself, feeling eyes upon you, sensing a quiet presence guiding, or perhaps judging your every step? For the nobility, hunting rituals took on more elaborate forms. The hunt breakfast was a cherished tradition, a hearty meal enjoyed in the early morning hours before setting off into the woods. Tables were laden with bread, cheese, cold meats, and ale, fueling hunters for the hours ahead. Can you imagine the excitement and camaraderie, laughter and conversation mingling softly in the crisp morning air? Yet once the hunt began, silence reigned supreme. Noble hunters often rode on horseback, accompanied by skilled trackers and trained dogs. They carried finely crafted bows, arrows, and spears, their clothing designed carefully for both practicality and display. Even then, however, the forest held surprises. Tales were told quietly around hearth fires, stories of hunters becoming lost, encountering dangerous animals, or stumbling upon hidden secrets deep within the woods. What mysteries did these forests truly hold, waiting quietly beneath thick canopies hidden in shadows? Hunting was, above all, an intricate dance between humans and nature. It shaped medieval life profoundly, influencing what people ate, how they lived, and even how they viewed the world around them. The forest provided generously, but it also demanded respect, patience, and quiet wisdom. Next, we'll journey back into the kitchens and dining halls, exploring how food shaped celebrations, rituals, and daily routines, bringing people together into moments of joy, comfort, and quiet gratitude. In the vast halls of medieval castles, food played a role far beyond simple nourishment. It was a symbol, a celebration, an expression of life's richness. Can you picture a grand feast hall, softly lit by flickering torches, decorated with banners and tapestries, waiting quietly for guests to gather? Servants bustled carefully, arranging plates of roasted meats, heaps of fresh bread, and colorful, carefully prepared dishes to delight their noble masters. But what exactly graced these lavish tables, and how did the preparations unfold behind the scenes? For noble gatherings, hunting expeditions provided more than simply sustenance. They were a crucial part of the spectacle itself. Venison, the prized meat of deer, was proudly displayed at tables, a testament to the lord's skill and prestige. Hunters brought their catch triumphantly back to the castle, horns sounding, dogs barking, a joyous procession celebrating their success. Imagine the excitement, the sense of pride swelling in the hearts of those who provided for their community. The meat was carefully prepared, roasted slowly over large fires, basted with honey or wine, seasoned sparingly with precious spices, each bite a luxurious symbol of wealth and skill. Yet what about the less fortunate, the humble villagers who lived beyond castle walls? Did they celebrate too, even without grand halls or exotic spices? Absolutely. Even among simple cottages, meals marked special occasions with quiet dignity and warmth. Weddings, births, harvest festivals, each event became an opportunity to gather, to share whatever bounty the land provided. Perhaps a pig carefully raised and fattened over months was finally roasted, its savory aroma drifting through the village, drawing neighbors together. Families brought bread, cheeses, and honey-sweetened cakes. They laughed, sang, and shared stories around humble tables, grateful for every morsel. In the kitchens, cooks, both noble and humble, relied on ingenuity and experience. Without recipes written neatly down, cooking skills passed gently from one generation to the next, taught through patient guidance and careful practice. How much salt to add? Which herbs complemented each dish? These answers were whispered quietly, carefully remembered and treasured. Young apprentices watched closely, learning the subtle signs: the scent of stew ready to serve, the golden crust of bread perfectly baked. Imagine standing in that kitchen, the aroma of herbs and roasting meat filling your senses, the warm glow of fire illuminating every careful movement. Yet even skilled cooks faced challenges. Without refrigeration or modern methods of preservation, how did they keep food safe and nutritious? Cleverly, medieval people had developed numerous methods: salting meats, drying fruits, smoking fish, and fermenting vegetables. Each method carefully preserved flavors, allowing food to last through harsh winters. Imagine the quiet, meticulous care these tasks required, each action ensuring survival through difficult months. Meanwhile, back in the forests, hunters learned to recognize the seasons, understanding deeply when each animal was at its peak. They knew when deer grazed quietly in clearings, when rabbits moved cautiously through underbrush, when birds nested gently among branches. For these hunters, knowledge was power, and patience their greatest skill. They waited silently, observing subtle changes in the forest, reading clues hidden in nature's quiet language. Can you picture yourself crouched among tall grasses, breath held softly, eyes scanning the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to release your arrow? Falconry too continued to fascinate medieval nobles, evolving into an art form. Training a falcon took patience, skill, and dedication. The birds required careful handling, gentle but firm guidance, becoming loyal companions over time. Nobles often spent hours quietly bonding with their falcons, building trust through careful feeding and meticulous training. Imagine holding your arm aloft, feeling the quiet weight of a powerful bird gripping gently, eyes sharp and alert, waiting for your command. Fishing communities, meanwhile, celebrated their own quiet rhythms. Villagers gathered together to mend nets, repair boats, and share knowledge of tides and currents. Children watched carefully, learning to recognize when fish moved quietly beneath shimmering surfaces, when storms approached on distant horizons. Entire villages lived in harmony with waters that sustained them, respecting the sea's unpredictable power. Can you imagine their quiet joy after a successful catch? Nets heavy with bounty, boats returning safely to shore? Each of these activities, hunting, fishing, cooking, preserving, shaped medieval life profoundly. Food was more than sustenance. It was a quiet reflection of skill, community, and connection to the natural world. Whether noble or humble, each meal carried meaning, a moment to pause, share gratitude, and savor the fruits of careful labor and quiet patience. Next, we'll venture deeper still into medieval marketplaces, exploring bustling streets filled with aromas, sounds, and wonders from near and far, where villagers and nobles alike gathered to trade, gossip, and discover treasures that enriched their daily meals. In the bustling heart of medieval villages and towns, market day arrived like an old friend, familiar, lively, and eagerly anticipated. Imagine the first rays of dawn gently touching the rooftops, soft murmurs drifting through cobblestone streets, carts creaking slowly toward the square. Have you ever wondered what it might feel like to step into such a lively scene? Your senses instantly awakened by the sights, sounds, and smells of a medieval marketplace? Farmers, hunters, fishermen, and merchants gathered quietly at dawn, carefully arranging their goods on simple wooden tables or colorful blankets spread across the ground. Fresh vegetables and fruits glistened gently in the morning sun. Carrots, turnips, apples, pears, their bright colors inviting eager hands. Fishermen proudly displayed their catch, silvery fish arranged neatly, scales glinting softly. Nearby, hunters stood quietly behind displays of freshly caught game. Rabbits, hares, pheasants, and perhaps a deer, carefully laid out, a testament to their skill and courage. Can you imagine yourself wandering these lively stalls, eyes wide, breathing deeply, savoring each aroma and glimpse? Yet alongside these familiar sights, the marketplace offered rarer treasures too. Traders who had traveled long roads or sailed stormy seas displayed goods that whispered of faraway lands and distant adventures. Exotic spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, sat in small, carefully guarded sacks, their rich scents drifting softly through the air, luring curious buyers closer. Dried fruits, dates, figs, and apricots traveled thousands of miles, their sweetness preserved and cherished. Have you ever considered just how precious these distant delicacies must have been, and how carefully they were traded, measured, and savored? For medieval villagers, market day wasn't merely about buying and selling. No, it was an occasion to gather, to catch up on news, to share stories and laughter. Imagine the gentle hum of conversations filling the square, laughter bubbling up softly from groups of friends and neighbors gathered closely together. Children played near stalls, eyes wide with curiosity, hands occasionally darting out to touch something intriguing. For a brief time, the worries of daily life receded, replaced by the warmth and comfort of community. But how exactly did villagers pay for these goods? After all, medieval times didn't exactly have grocery stores with neat checkout lanes, no debit cards or crisp paper bills. Instead, transactions were often made through barter, a quiet negotiation of value and worth. Perhaps a villager traded fresh eggs for a handful of onions, or a fisherman exchanged salted fish for grain. Coins, when available, were precious, carefully counted, and offered sparingly. Can you picture the gentle exchanges? The quiet nods and careful handshakes? Each transaction a dance of trust and fairness. Yet market day wasn't without its tensions. Huntsmen carefully watched their game, aware that illegal hunting could carry harsh penalties. Hunters had to choose carefully whom they sold to, gauging trustworthiness with quiet caution, always wary of authorities who could appear at any moment. Can you imagine the tension? The careful whispers, the quick glances over shoulders, hoping each transaction went unnoticed by prying eyes? Meanwhile, merchants who specialized in rare and costly spices often faced suspicion as well. Could buyers truly tell authentic spices from clever imitations? Did unscrupulous traders sometimes mix cheaper substances into their valuable goods? Absolutely, and buyers knew this, carefully examining each purchase, perhaps even tasting tiny samples, always alert to deception. Imagine yourself standing quietly beside a merchant's stall, carefully inspecting a pinch of pepper, wondering if its true origin matched its price, if the flavor justified the cost. Even among simpler goods, careful selection mattered greatly. Housewives paused thoughtfully before baskets of eggs, lifting each one gently, inspecting carefully for cracks or freshness. Farmers examined livestock closely, assessing each animal's health and strength. Hunters proudly explained their catches, detailing freshness and quality, hoping to convince hesitant buyers. Can you picture yourself in their shoes, aware that each choice mattered deeply, affecting meals, health, and happiness in days to come? Yet, amid all these careful transactions, market day also brought simple joys. Perhaps a traveling baker had set up nearby, the warm aroma of freshly baked bread drifting gently through the square. Villagers paused, inhaling deeply, drawn irresistibly toward the comforting scent. Or perhaps a vendor offered honey-sweetened cakes, small treats that children eagerly eyed, tugging gently at their parents' sleeves, eyes wide with hope. Can you sense the quiet delight these treats brought? Simple moments of sweetness amid daily routines. Each bustling medieval market day was a tapestry woven from careful decisions, quiet conversations, and shared experiences. Food itself wasn't simply sustenance. It was community, trust, and tradition. Next, we'll journey deeper still, learning how medieval people navigated the changing seasons, adapting their hunts, gardening practices, and cooking methods to embrace the quiet, steady rhythms of nature. As autumn quietly descended upon medieval Europe, the world gently changed. Forests turned golden and red, cool breezes whispered softly through branches, and villages bustled with careful preparations for the coming winter. Have you ever wondered how medieval communities adapted their hunting, fishing, and gathering as the seasons shifted? How did they ensure food remained abundant and safe, even as days grew shorter, colder, and more uncertain? Autumn was a busy season, a time of quiet urgency and careful labor. Hunters ventured deep into forests, knowing animals were fattening themselves for the lean months ahead. Deer, boar, and wildfowl became prized catches, their meat richer, more nourishing. Villagers worked together, coordinating hunts with care and precision, each person knowing their role, each step rehearsed through years of patient practice. Imagine yourself among them, footsteps padding softly through fallen leaves, arrows at the ready, your breath visible in the crisp morning air. Yet hunting was only part of the autumn rhythm. Villagers gathered nuts, hazelnuts, walnuts, chestnuts, fallen gently from trees, their shells cracked carefully by firelight, kernels stored safely away. Apples and pears were collected too, sliced thin and dried slowly beside warm hearths. Children eagerly joined in these tasks, laughter mingling quietly with the rustle of dry leaves and soft footsteps among orchard trees. Can you picture the quiet joy of these simple harvests? Hands busy, baskets heavy, hearts warmed by community and shared purpose. Fishing communities adapted as well, carefully observing subtle signs of changing weather and water temperatures. Fish moved deeper, becoming harder to catch, requiring patience and skill. Fishermen rose earlier, setting out in boats beneath skies painted softly in shades of pink and gold, nets cast gently into chilly waters. They smoked and salted their catches, preserving each morsel with meticulous care, knowing winter's grasp would soon tighten. Imagine yourself there, feeling the gentle sway of a fishing boat, cold mist brushing your face, waiting quietly for life's bounty. Back in the village kitchens, autumn meant careful preparations, preserving the season's bounty for colder days ahead. Families worked together, drying herbs, salting meats, pickling vegetables, filling storehouses with jars and barrels stacked neatly, waiting patiently to sustain families through winter's long nights. Imagine stepping into one of these small, quiet storehouses, breathing deeply the mingled scents of dried fruits, smoked fish, and salted meats carefully arranged on shelves, each item a quiet promise against hunger and hardship. For the nobility, autumn hunts became grand events, wrapped in tradition and spectacle. Lords and ladies gathered in richly dressed groups, horses groomed meticulously, falcons perched proudly on gloved hands. They ventured into forests, horns sounding softly, dogs racing ahead, excitement and anticipation filling the cool air. Venison, boar, and pheasant graced their tables, celebrated in feasts that showcased skill, wealth, and status. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be part of these celebrations? The quiet pride and joy that came from capturing nature's bounty and sharing it generously? Yet beneath the spectacle, even noble households understood the need for careful preservation and preparation. Chefs and assistants busied themselves salting, smoking, and curing meats, preserving their freshness. They carefully dried fruits and made preserves, storing them away for colder months when fresh produce would be scarce. Imagine the bustling kitchens filled with warmth and purposeful activity, each task quietly ensuring meals remained flavorful and nourishing through harsh winter months. And what of the humble villagers, those without grand kitchens or abundant resources? They relied on ingenuity, community, and quiet resilience. Autumn was a time to share resources, to trade goods, to support neighbors who might face shortages. Perhaps a family with extra apples exchanged them for salted fish or a basket of nuts. Quiet acts of generosity wove villages tightly together, a gentle network of kindness and cooperation, ensuring survival. Have you considered the quiet courage and strength required to share, even when resources felt limited? As autumn slowly turned toward winter, medieval people paused quietly, grateful for the bounty nature provided, respectful of the careful work and skill required to harness it. Each hunt, each harvest, each preserved morsel represented more than simple survival. It symbolized community, tradition, and quiet harmony with the natural world. Next, we'll journey deeper into winter itself, exploring how medieval communities faced cold, darkness, and scarcity, adapting their hunts, fishing, and cooking to sustain themselves through the long, quiet months ahead. Winter settled softly over medieval Europe, wrapping villages and forests alike in blankets of quiet snow. The world slowed, sounds muffled beneath layers of white, smoke drifting gently from chimneys into gray skies. How did medieval communities survive these long, cold months when fields lay frozen, game became scarce, and rivers iced over? What foods sustained them? What quiet skills allowed them to thrive, even amid winter stillness? Inside humble cottages, families gathered closely around warm hearths, savoring meals carefully preserved in autumn months. Pots hung over gentle fires, simmering slowly filled with salted meats, dried vegetables, and hearty grains. Imagine the soft crackle of flames, the quiet murmurs of conversation, the comforting aroma of stew filling each small home. Food, so carefully stored, now became a quiet treasure, each morsel a testament to careful planning and patient labor. Yet even with careful preparation, fresh meat remained a precious necessity. Hunting in winter posed challenges, yes, but villagers adapted skillfully. Deer, boar, and smaller game still moved quietly among snow-covered trees, their tracks clearly visible against white ground. Hunters ventured out, bundled warmly, their breath fogging softly in the frigid air. They studied footprints carefully, reading signs left by cautious animals, following trails patiently for hours. Have you ever pictured yourself stepping softly through silent winter forests, ears alert for the faint crunch of snow, eyes scanning carefully for movement? Small traps and snares became especially important now, set carefully in hidden places, concealed among snowdrifts and icy branches. Rabbits, squirrels, and birds, though humble prey, meant survival. Hunters checked traps quietly each morning, hearts quickening with gentle hope, grateful for each catch. Imagine their quiet relief lifting a rabbit from a snare, knowing their family would eat well that night, thanks to patient skill and quiet courage. Fishing, too, adapted to winter's challenges. Villagers ventured onto frozen lakes and rivers, carefully cutting holes through thick ice. Lines lowered patiently into frigid water. Fishermen huddled together, sharing warmth, stories, and quiet laughter, waiting for subtle tugs, signaling a catch below. Fish were smaller, perhaps fewer, but each catch was precious, carefully carried home, cooked slowly over glowing fires, shared gratefully. Have you ever imagined yourself sitting quietly beside an icy hole, bundled warmly, feeling winter's chill yet warmed by companionship and quiet purpose? For noble households, winter hunting was an event both practical and symbolic. Hunts were carefully planned, often grand affairs despite, or perhaps because of, the season's challenges. Imagine a group of riders moving slowly through snowy fields, breath visible, cloaks wrapped tightly, dogs bounding eagerly ahead. The quiet beauty of snow-covered landscapes provided a striking backdrop, each successful hunt celebrated with feasts featuring roasted venison, wild boar, or pheasant. Symbols of skill, status, and mastery over nature's quiet difficulties. Yet, beyond spectacle, nobles too relied on careful preparations made months earlier. Kitchens bustled gently, cooks pulling salted meats and preserved fruits from storerooms, transforming them into flavorful dishes that brightened winter tables. Rich stews, spiced wine, dried fruits simmered slowly with honey. Each dish carried quiet reminders of warmer months, distant places, and careful preparations. Have you ever considered how these simple preserved ingredients brought warmth and joy to long winter evenings, lifting spirits amid darkness and cold? For everyone, winter also meant relying heavily on stored grains. Bread baked slowly on hearthstones became daily sustenance, nourishing bodies and spirits alike. Imagine biting into a warm loaf, crust crackling softly, savoring each bite, knowing how carefully the grain had been gathered, ground, stored, and baked. Even humble porridge, made from oats or barley, offered quiet comfort, sweetened sparingly with dried berries or honey, eaten slowly as families gathered around fires, sharing stories, laughter, and warmth. Yet despite careful planning, winter sometimes brought scarcity and hardship. Villagers turned to simple, humble foods, relying on beans, peas, lentils, and dried vegetables when meats grew scarce. They made creative dishes, stretching ingredients carefully, flavoring meals with herbs dried months earlier. Communities quietly supported one another, sharing what they could spare, forming gentle bonds of kindness and strength. Can you picture the quiet courage required to face winter's harshness? Not only surviving, but thriving through ingenuity, cooperation, and quiet resilience? Winter hunts, fishing, and cooking revealed the true strength of medieval communities, not in grandeur or abundance alone, but in quiet patience, careful skill, and gentle generosity. Each preserved morsel, each carefully hunted meal, represented more than nourishment. It symbolized hope, resilience, and quiet triumph over nature's challenges. Next, we'll journey forward into the gentle awakening of spring, exploring how medieval communities emerged from winter's grasp, embracing new growth, fresh hunting opportunities, and the quiet renewal of life itself. As the first gentle breaths of spring warmed the medieval landscape, life quietly stirred beneath melting snow and thawing ice. Forests once silent began to hum softly with the sounds of returning birds, flowing streams, and rustling leaves. Have you ever imagined the relief medieval villagers felt as winter's grip slowly loosened, promising new life, fresh food, and renewed hope? With spring's arrival, hunters stepped carefully back into the awakening forest, watching closely for signs of animals emerging from their winter hiding places. Deer, lean but agile, cautiously returned to meadows, nibbling tender new shoots of grass. Villagers moved softly, bows and arrows at the ready, tracking carefully, aware that survival still depended on their skill. Can you picture yourself among these hunters? Each step deliberate, each breath quiet, senses sharpened by months of careful patience? Smaller animals, too, brought vital nourishment. Rabbits, hares, and squirrels ventured out timidly, searching for fresh greens and roots. Hunters set snares carefully, hidden among brightening undergrowth, patiently waiting to see their traps spring successfully. Imagine the quiet excitement of returning home, a rabbit held gently, knowing your family would eat well that evening. A simple, profound joy marking the return of life's abundance. Fishing communities, too, felt spring's quiet revival deeply. Rivers, once locked beneath winter ice, now flowed gently, teeming with fish eager to spawn upstream. Fishermen returned to their boats, lines and nets repaired carefully, hearts lifted by the promise of fresh catches. Imagine yourself gliding softly upon calm waters, the scent of spring blossoms drifting from shore, nets dipping silently beneath the surface, catching the bounty offered generously by nature itself. Yet springtime was more than hunting and fishing. It was also a time for foraging, carefully gathering tender wild plants, mushrooms, and berries slowly ripening beneath gentle sunlight. Villagers wandered quietly through fields and forests, baskets in hand, eyes scanning carefully for edible treasures. Wild garlic, nettles, sorrel, and dandelion leaves were collected tenderly, bringing fresh flavor and nourishment after months of preserved foods. Have you ever considered the quiet knowledge required to distinguish safe plants from dangerous ones? Each careful choice ensuring health and safety? Back in the village gardens, the gentle work of planting began anew. Ground softened slowly beneath warming sun, villagers turning earth carefully, scattering seeds of peas, beans, onions, and carrots, planting herbs, thyme, rosemary, mint, whose fragrance would soon brighten simple meals. Imagine yourself kneeling quietly in the soft earth, fingertips pressing seeds gently into soil, heart filled with quiet hope for the harvest to come. For nobility, spring hunts became festive celebrations, honoring nature's renewal with lively expeditions. Lords and ladies gathered eagerly, horses polished, Falcons perched proudly, hunting horns echoing gently through awakening forests. Venison, hares, and fresh game birds returned triumphantly to castle kitchens, cooked slowly over glowing fires, seasoned sparingly with precious spices stored carefully through winter months. Can you imagine the joyful, bustling kitchens, aromas drifting softly through grand halls, signaling life's gentle return? Yet even amid noble celebration, spring brought reminders of the careful balance between abundance and scarcity. Hunters knew animals were still lean from winter's hardships. Each catch was precious, respected, and used fully. Bones became broth, hides carefully tanned, meat preserved thoughtfully, ensuring nothing went to waste. Villagers and nobles alike quietly understood their dependence on nature's rhythms, grateful for each morsel, aware that abundance was never guaranteed. In humble cottages, spring meals brought quiet delight. Fresh fish simmered gently with wild herbs, young greens added carefully to nourishing soups, accompanied by loaves of newly baked bread. Each bite celebrated as a quiet victory over winter's hardships. Families gathered closely around wooden tables, laughter mingling softly with shared gratitude, savoring flavors they'd long missed. Can you picture yourself among them, tasting fresh, simple ingredients, feeling warmth spread gently through your heart? Springtime hunting and gathering was more than mere survival. It was a quiet celebration of renewal, patience rewarded, and life continuing its gentle rhythm. Medieval communities moved carefully through each season, guided by ancient knowledge, quiet courage, and deep respect for nature's quiet generosity. Next, we'll journey into summer's vibrant warmth, exploring how medieval people thrived in this season of abundance, filling their tables, hearts, and communities with quiet joy. As summer settled warmly across medieval Europe, the land blossomed gently into abundance. Long days stretched lazily, sunlight spilling softly through trees heavy with fruit, fields rippling gently under golden waves of grain. Can you imagine the quiet joy medieval villagers felt, stepping into a season so generous, so vibrant, after months of careful patience and preparation? In forests thick with green, hunters moved quietly beneath leafy canopies, tracking animals now strong and plentiful. Deer grazed comfortably in shaded meadows, their coats glossy, bodies strong. A nourishing reward for those patient enough to pursue them. Hunters coordinated carefully, communicating through subtle gestures, footsteps muffled by soft grasses, arrows ready yet steady. Imagine yourself there, breath held gently, eyes focused, waiting for the precise moment to act, knowing your skill would feed families and strengthen communities. Smaller prey, rabbits, hares, squirrels, bounded playfully through summer fields and woods, abundant and healthy. Villagers, young and old alike, set snares and traps, checking them quietly each morning, hearts hopeful. Imagine the quiet thrill of discovering a successful catch, carrying it home triumphantly, knowing your careful work had provided nourishment for those you loved. Fishing communities thrived during summer's warmth, rivers and lakes teeming abundantly with life. Fishermen rose early, boats gliding softly onto calm waters, nets casting gently beneath shimmering surfaces, hauling in catches brimming with silvery fish. Villagers gathered along shores, cleaning and preparing fish for immediate meals or careful preservation, smoked, salted, dried, ensuring sustenance in leaner seasons. Have you ever imagined yourself standing beside these quiet waters, hands busy, laughter and stories mingling with the gentle lapping of waves? Yet summer was more than hunting and fishing. It was also a time of rich harvest from gardens tended patiently through previous months. Villagers carefully plucked vegetables, peas, beans, lettuces, onions, from neatly tended beds, baskets heavy with fresh nourishment. Herb gardens flourished gently beneath summer sun, rosemary, thyme, mint, sage lending fragrance and flavor to simple, delicious meals. Imagine walking slowly through these gardens, fingertips brushing softly against aromatic leaves, inhaling deeply the quiet delights of summer abundance. In orchards and wild hedgerows alike, fruit ripened sweetly beneath warm sunlight. Apples, pears, cherries, and plums gently filled baskets, villagers gathering them carefully, savoring their sweetness fresh or preserving slices slowly dried beside warm hearths. Children roamed freely, mouths stained happily with berry juice, laughter bubbling gently as they returned home with baskets proudly filled. Have you ever considered the quiet joy of these simple moments? Families working side by side, savoring life's sweetness? Summer markets overflowed vibrantly, villagers and merchants gathering eagerly to trade fresh produce, meats, fish, and carefully crafted goods. Stalls brimmed gently with colorful vegetables, fragrant herbs, newly caught game displayed proudly. Exotic spices, though precious, were traded with quiet excitement. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, each pinch a treasured addition to special meals. Imagine yourself wandering through bustling market stalls, senses delighted gently, each transaction weaving quietly deeper bonds of trust and community. For nobility, summer hunting became extravagant celebrations, grand expeditions showcasing skill, status, and abundance. Lords and ladies rode carefully groomed horses, falcons perched proudly, hunting horns echoing softly through lush forests. Venison, boar, and game birds returned triumphantly to castle kitchens, transformed slowly into lavish feasts seasoned generously with carefully stored spices. Can you picture grand halls softly illuminated, tables laden abundantly, laughter and conversation mingling gently, celebrating summer's rich bounty? Even amid noble feasts, however, careful preservation remained vital. Kitchens bustled quietly, cooks salting, smoking, drying meats, fruits, and herbs, storing them safely away for seasons ahead. Every village, every household, noble or humble, understood deeply the rhythms of abundance and scarcity, respecting each morsel, grateful for summer's generosity. Have you ever imagined the careful, quiet work necessary to ensure survival through every season? Each preserved ingredient, a quiet promise kept. Summer meals brought communities together in simple joy around wooden tables, beneath village trees, beside softly flowing rivers. Fresh fish grilled gently over fires, vegetables simmered tenderly, bread baked slowly, fruits shared generously. Each bite celebrated as a quiet triumph of patience, skill, and community resilience. Imagine yourself among them, tasting summer's warmth, feeling gentle bonds of friendship and family woven tighter with each shared meal. As summer slowly waned, medieval villagers paused quietly, hearts grateful for the abundance they had enjoyed, quietly preparing once more for seasons ahead. Their lives carefully balanced hunting, gathering, fishing, gardening, and cooking. Each skill passed gently through generations, each meal nourishing bodies and spirits alike. In quiet reflection, we understand how deeply medieval people respected the slow, steady rhythms of nature, carefully adapting, patiently thriving. Their quiet courage, gentle skill, and humble gratitude remind us softly of connections between people, food, and land. Timeless truths quietly echoing, inviting us to pause, savor, and appreciate the simple richness found in every carefully prepared meal. Every quiet moment shared around tables through history itself. Thank you for listening. It means so much. If you enjoy what I share here, liking the video is a lovely way to show it if you haven't already. And if you feel like it's time to subscribe, I'd be honored to have you along. Feel free to share in the comments your favorite part of this exploration or where you tuned in from. Can't wait to see you in the next one. Goodbye.